Namaste,
Namaskar.
good afternoon, and good morning to all of those in India. My name is Jim Verghese. I'm the National Chair of the Australia-India Business Council. Namaste. Before it's proceeding good today, I'd like to do, and good morning to all of those in welcome to the country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're gathered here on today in every part of our nation here in Australia. I pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, the culture, and hopes of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across our nation here in Australia. The Australia-India Business Council was established in 1986 to foster bilateral relations between Australia and India. We're the only premier non-profit organisation with a mission to promote trade dialogue between India and Australia through nurturing and maintaining close relationships in both Australia and India. The AIBC is a national membership organisation with active chapters in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth and Canberra, and maintains close relationships with federal and state agencies, the diplomatic corps, and industry bodies. We're fortunate to have influential and highly energetic volunteers who work well collaboratively and actively promote our message of increasing trade and investment between India and Australia. And this is, of course, evidenced in the AIBC Digital Exchange to promote trade and investment. And we have key industry chairs in agribusiness, corporate chapter, digital chapter, and of course today in education and skills development chapter, financial services, healthcare, make in India, renewable energy, SME startups and innovation, women in business, young business leaders, and a sports chapter. Now today is a very exciting day. We have Australia-India Skills Training and Collaboration. It is a digital roundtable, and we're very fortunate to have the Honourable Education Minister for New South Wales, Dr. Jeff Lee, the Honourable Education Minister for India, Dr. Ramesh Nishank, our Australian High Commissioner in India, Barry O'Farrell, and of course we also have a very good panel that has Saxon Rice, the National Vet Regulator and Chief Executive Officer of ASQA, Mr. Peter Mackey, the Director of Education, Sector Engagement Investment New South Wales, and of course a representative from the India Institute of Technology. Now, to kick off the proceedings today, we're fortunate to have, as our moderator, Dr. Partha Mukherjee, who, of course, is our Education Chair, AIBC Chair for Education and Skills Development. Dr. Partha is a distinguished academic and a professional governance expert. He has had over 40 years of industry experience and 30 years of teaching experience locally and globally. Dr. Partha has worked in global multinational corporations like Standard Chartered Bank and Colgate-Palmolive globally, and as a director in the Department of Planning, New South Wales Government, and in Sydney Trains. We also are fortunate today to deliver our vote of thanks. We have Vinod Merchandani, who is the Director, India AIBC. Vinod, of course, is the founder of VM Advisory Services, LNP International Education Specialist, and a Director of the Australian-India Business Council based in Mumbai in India. He was also Deputy Director of the Australian India Institute in Delhi, where he is responsible for programs, management and operations of the Institute. So he's very fortunate to have him working with us on this very important digital roundtable. So without further ado, I'd like now to hand over to Dr. Partha Mukherjee.
It's my pleasure now to invite for the opening remarks our Honourable Minister, Dr. Jeff Lee, Minister of Skills and Tertiary Education, New South Wales, Minister of Sports, Multiculturalism, Seniors and Veterans, and member of New South Wales Parliament for Parramatta. Dr. Jeff Lee was elected to Parliament as a state member for Parramatta in 2011. Dr. Lee served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Premier, Western Sydney and Multiculturalism before receiving his ministerial appointment as Minister for Skills and Tertiary Education in April 2019. Prior to entering politics, Jeff was an award-winning business owner, TAFE teacher, lecturer, and later the Associate Dean in the Western Sydney University. His research and publications cover small business and online learning and adult education. I now invite Honorable Minister Jeff Lee to make his opening remarks. Dr. Jeff Lee, please. Dr. Jeff Lee, are you online?
Sorry, Partha, we're having technical difficulties with Minister Jeff Lee. I think he might be coming on now.
Right.
Thank you, Minister Jeff Lee. Are you available? Yeah, we're having some technical issues with Minister. Vishal, Minister's office is calling you at the moment.
Should we then play Minister of Education India while we fix the technical issues with Minister Jeff Lee?
Thank you, Vishal.
Vishal?
He's on the phone to Minister's office at the moment.
Oh, okay.
Apologies, everybody. Partha, if you could just perhaps introduce Minister from India.
Yeah, I'll do that. We also have the pleasure of having the Honorable Education Minister from India, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishant ji. Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishant ji is an Indian politician, social worker, and literarian. He is recognized in India and abroad as a writer. Sorry, every time I think the full screen is coming, my half screen is going off. So that's why my notes are actually getting off. So sorry for that little bit of interruptions. So Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishant is an Indian politician, social worker, and literarian. He's recognized in India and abroad as a writer, poet, and sensitive thinker on nationalism and environment. He has published and authored more than 75 pieces of poems, novels, short stories, memoirs, children's stories, and books, which have been published in more than 10 languages. He has received several awards in the field of literature and administration in India and from overseas governments like Government of Dubai, Mauritius, Ukraine, and Nepal, and from Cambridge University also. More than 15 countries have honored him for his work. Honorable Education Minister is currently leading the Indian education system in a holistic and comprehensive manner to reform India into a global knowledge superpower. I invite Vishal now to play the video clip. Minister is actually having, at this point of time, a cabinet meeting, which started at 10:30 in India time. And therefore, this video presentation, which he has very kindly organized for ourselves. So over to Vishal, please.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया भारत कौशल प्रशिक्षण एवं सहयोग के इस महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित माननीय जोफल ली जी, कौशल एवं विश्वविद्यालय शिक्षा, खेल, संस्कृति मंत्री ऑस्ट्रेलिया, माननीय वेरी ओ फेरल जी, भारत में ऑस्ट्रेलिया के उच्च आयुक्त, सुश्री सेक्शन राइस जी, राष्ट्रीय वीईटी नियामक और मुख्य कार्याधिकारी, ऑस्ट्रेलियाई कौशल गुणवत्ता प्राधिकरण, श्री पीटर मैकेजी, निदेशक शिक्षा क्षेत्र न्यू साउथ वेल्स, प्रोफेसर विकेतिवा, निदेशक IIT खड़गपुर, श्री जिम वर्गी जी, राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष ऑस्ट्रेलिया इंडिया बिजनेस काउंसिल, डॉक्टर पार्थ मुखर्जी जी, एजुकेशन एंड स्किल्स चैप्टर चेयर, ऑस्ट्रेलिया इंडिया बिजनेस काउंसिल, श्री विनोद मीर चंदानी जी, निदेशक ऑस्ट्रेलिया इंडिया बिजनेस काउंसिल भारत, और सभी व्यापार और उद्योग जगत के नेतृत्वकर्तागण और ऑनलाइन के माध्यम से हमारे साथ जुड़े सभी शैक्षणिक संस्थान, छात्र, उनके अभिभावकगण और तमाम उन अतिथियों का मैं इस बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम में अभिनंदन कर रहा हूँ। वैश्वीकरण और अंतर्राष्ट्रीयकरण के दौर में कौशल विकास और उसका प्रशिक्षण सहयोग जैसे महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर इस सभा में मैं अपने को जोड़ करके गौरवान्वित महसूस कर रहा हूँ। जैसे कि आप जानते हैं कि पूरे विश्व में ये कोविड-19 की महामारी का जो गहरे संकट से हम गुजर रहे हैं, इन चुनौतियों का सामना करने के लिए ज़रूरी है कि हम सब लोग मिल करके एकजुट होकर के वैश्विक महामारी का मजबूती से हम सामना करें। अगर मैं संक्षेप में कहूँ तो कोऑपरेशन, कोलैबोरेशन, कंसल्टेशन और कम्युनिकेशन के मंत्र को हमें अपनाकर इस चुनौती पर हर हालत में विजय प्राप्त करनी पड़ेगी। हमारे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ अपने गहरे संबंधों को कहते हुए कहा था कि हमारे साझा मूल्यों और आकांक्षाओं से उत्पन्न एक स्वाभाविक साझेदारी के रूप में हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। ग्लोबल विलेज के रूप में जिस प्रकार दुनिया का स्वरूप बदल रहा है, इस परिवेश में ज़रूरी कि हम कौशल विकास के क्षेत्र में कोऑपरेशन के साथ साथ कोलैबोरेशन को भी पारस्परिक संबंधों को और मजबूत करने के लिए हम एक दूसरे के निकट आएं, एक दूसरे का उपयोग करें। दोनों देशों के बीच इस क्षेत्र में बहुत अपार संभावनाएं भी हैं। आज भारत की 65% आबादी 35 वर्ष से कम है, यानी कि 130 करोड़ जनसंख्या वाला दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा लोकतांत्रिक देश हिंदुस्तान की यदि युवा शक्ति का आंकलन करेंगे तो लगभग 84 करोड़ युवा होता है। और ये युवा शक्ति हमको कुशल बना करके भारत को विश्व में अग्रिम पंक्ति में खड़ा करने के लिए हम प्रतिबद्ध भी हैं और हमारा प्रयास है, लगातार प्रयास है। कौशल विकास से न केवल रोजगार के बेहतर अवसर मिलते हैं बल्कि देश में अनुसंधान नवाचार की संस्कृति को विकसित करने में भी बहुत मदद मिलती है। मेक इन इंडिया, डिजिटल इंडिया, स्किल इंडिया, स्टार्टअप और स्टैंड अप इसी विशाल सोच का परिणाम है जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एक सूत्र हमको दिया है। मुझे ये बात आपको साझा करते हुए बहुत खुशी होती है कि वर्ष 2015 में जहां ग्लोबल इनोवेशन इंडेक्स में भारत का स्थान 81वां था, वहीं 2020 में इसमें उछाल आई है और तेजी से सुधार में 48 ये हो गया है। मुझे लगता है कि ये अपेक्षा करते काफ़ी तेजी से प्रगति का एक प्रतीक है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में आत्मनिर्भर भारत के निर्माण की दिशा में तेजी से टीम इंडिया के रूप में काम हो रहा है। इसी क्रम में हमने कोरोना काल में दुनिया के सबसे बड़ा रिफॉर्म NEP 2020 लेकर के हम आए हैं, जहां 2020 को कोरोना काल का पूरी दुनिया में कोरोना के नाम से लोग याद करेंगे। वहीं 2020 भारत में आई नई शिक्षा नीति जो वैश्विक फलक पर दीप्त हुई है, उसके लिए भी 2020 जाना जाएगा। इस नई शिक्षा नीति में कुछ दिनों पहले यूनेस्को की DG आंड्रे अजोले के साथ जब मुझे चर्चा करने का मौका मिला था, तो मुझे खुशी है कि उन्होंने इस नीति की प्रशंसा की और उन्होंने कहा कि यह नीति न केवल दूरदर्शी है बल्कि पूरे शिक्षा क्षेत्र को बदलने में सक्षम भी है। कौशल विकास को बढ़ावा देती है हमारी शिक्षा नीति। हम स्कूली शिक्षा के स्तर पर स्किलिंग, रीस्किलिंग और अप स्किलिंग पर विशेष ध्यान केंद्रित कर रहे हैं। इस शिक्षा नीति के माध्यम से हम कक्षा 6 से ही विद्यार्थियों के लिए वोकेशनल एजुकेशन के साथ इंटर्नशिप और अप्रेंटिसशिप का भी प्रावधान लेकर के आ रहे हैं। इस प्रावधान के माध्यम से हम विद्यार्थियों को स्थानीय कौशल जरूरतों के अनुसार स्थानीय व्यावसायिक विशेषज्ञों एवं स्थानीय उद्योगों के साथ जोड़ करके उन्हें व्यावहारिक अनुभव प्रदान करेंगे। मेरा मानना है कि स्किल डेवलपमेंट से कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग और कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग से नेशन बिल्डिंग की दिशा में हम तेजी से विकास कर सकते हैं और साथ ही छात्रों को व्यावहारिक अनुभव भी प्रदान कर सकते हैं। हमने माध्यमिक स्कूलों को आईटी, पॉलिटेक्निक और स्थानीय उद्योगों के साथ जोड़ने की कोशिश की है। छात्रों को तकनीकी क्षेत्र में हुनरमंद कैसे बनाया जा सकता है उसके लिए स्किल लैब की भी स्थापना हो रही है। हमारे उच्चतर शिक्षा संस्थान स्वयं या उद्योग व गैर सरकारी संगठनों के साथ साझेदारी कर व्यावसायिक शिक्षा प्रदान करेंगे। इसके अलावा 4 वर्षीय बहु विषयक स्नातक कार्यक्रम सहित सभी स्नातक डिग्री कार्यक्रमों में नामांकित छात्रों के लिए व्यावसायिक पाठ्यक्रम उपलब्ध कराया जा रहा है। शिक्षा और उद्योग जगत के बीच जो अंतर है उसको भी हम कम कर रहे हैं और एक विस्तृत कार्य योजना इसके लिए बनाई जा रही है। हम लोगों का लक्ष्य है कि 2025 तक स्कूल और उच्च शिक्षा प्रणाली के माध्यम से हम कम से कम 50% शिक्षार्थियों को व्यावसायिक शिक्षा का लाभ दे सकेंगे। का मतलब जो हमारे शिक्षार्थी हैं वो उनको यदि हम केवल 50% भी देते हैं तो 150 मिलियन से भी अधिक छात्र व्यावसायिक शिक्षा से जोड़ेंगे, कौशल का विकास होगा और वो हर क्षेत्र में आगे बढ़ने के लिए तत्पर रहेंगे। ये जो नई शिक्षा नीति NEP 2020 भारत की आई है, इसमें शिक्षा के अंतर्राष्ट्रीयकरण पर भी हमने जोर दिया है। नीति के अनुसार विश्व के शीर्ष 100 संस्थान हिंदुस्तान की धरती पर आएंगे, जबकि हमारे भी उत्कृष्ट संस्थान विश्व के फलक पर जाएंगे, तो पूरी दुनिया इस शिक्षा व्यवस्था में एकजुट होकर के आगे बढ़ सकेगी। भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में सहयोग और आदान प्रदान हमेशा ही उल्लेखनीय रहा है। निश्चित रूप से शिक्षा और कौशल का समन्वय हमारी मानव संपदा को एक नई दिशा देगा और निश्चित एक सशक्तिकरण की ओर मार्ग भी हमारा प्रशस्त करेगा। मेरा मानना है कि कौशल शिक्षा और प्रशिक्षण को बढ़ावा देने में दोनों ही देशों के बीच साझेदारी से भारत ऑस्ट्रेलिया संबंध और भी मजबूत होंगे। इसी क्रम में एक संयुक्त टास्क फोर्स की संभावना तलाशी जा सकती है, जो कौशल विकास के लिए एक संयुक्त रोड मैप भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया संयुक्त रूप से एक रोड मैप तैयार कर सकते हैं और दोनों देशों का उसका लाभ मिल सकता है। मुझे यकीन है कि आज के इस वैचारिक विमर्श और बौद्धिक मंथन के पश्चात उभरने वाले विचार निश्चित रूप से एक सकारात्मक पहल के रूप में हमारा मार्गदर्शन करेंगे। मैं अंत में भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के बीच इस संवाद प्रक्रिया को सहज बनाने के लिए ऑस्ट्रेलिया इंडिया बिजनेस काउंसिल को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं, धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं। मैं आशा करता हूं कि आप इसी तरह दोनों देशों के संबंधों को और मजबूत करने में अपनी गहरी और प्रमुख भूमिका निभाते रहेंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। नमस्कार।
I must thank Honorable Education Minister of India, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank ji, and special thanks to Minister's Office and the team led by Sri Purushottam ji and also people like Sharthak. I understand that yesterday they worked overnight to not only record Minister's address to us, but also took trouble to actually translate those in English subtitle. So therefore, a big thank to Sri Purushottam ji and his entire team. The special point which I noted from Minister's address is the 150 million Indian youth will be requiring skills training. And I think that's where a time-tested Australian skills training and qualification sector will come very handy in terms of our partnership and collaboration. I'm sure this is just the icebreaker. We will continue such dialogue in future and progress to its natural conclusion for a good relationship and good partnership between the two countries. Vishal, are we ready now to bring in Honorable Minister from New South Wales, Dr. Jeff Lee?
I hope so.
Okay, terrific. So over to you, Minister, Dr. Jeff Lee.
And thank you very much, Doctor. And my apologies for the technical glitches that we had before, and thank you for your indulgence. It is a great opportunity to address everybody here today. And can I say it's a great opportunity to introduce Peter Mackey, who is, I understand, going to deliver the keynote address from Study New South Wales and look at how we're developing those further partnerships between Australia and India. Firstly, can I congratulate the Australian-India Business Council for putting on today's summit and convening today's summit. And I'll extend my appreciation also to the IMC Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Mumbai. And thank you for supporting this important summit. As the Minister for Skills, can I say that there's never been a better time to be a Minister for Skills, because both the New South Wales Government and the Australian Government are very focused on skill development. For Australia, it means for far too long we've structured our education system and it's been biased towards everybody should go to university. Unfortunately, not everybody needs to go to university, should go to university. And in fact, we have the premise that that we should actually give students at school the information so they can make an informed choice about what they're going to do after school. We know that 40% of our students will go to university, but the other 40 to 60%, we need to give them an informed decision about what their careers are going to be in the future. For countries like Australia anyway, that skills development is particularly important, especially during the times when it's so difficult when international borders are closed. And this presents a great opportunity. We were heavily reliant upon skill migration. That has stopped at the moment. So the need to upskill, reskill our young people and not so young people to move between different careers is so important to our nation. Can I say we are very committed. The four important areas that we're looking at the moment is improving the quality of our vocational educational training, whether it's at schools or the organisations like TAFE, which we fund. In other words, from moving from a model of compliance to quality delivery to match industry requirements. The second area is certainly that pathways programs to actually allow for students in Year 10 to make a choice, whether they're going down an academic pathway or a skills pathway, or, which is the great hope, is to not preclude students to make choices which allow them to either do the academic pathway or the skills pathway in the future, so a blended approach. So that'll be particularly important for us in terms of allowing students that informed choice. The third area that we're focused on is development of institutes of applied technology. This is as a result of a major paper by David Gonski and Peter Shergold, looking at what the future of vocational education training will be in New South Wales. And it's really looking at bridging the link between vocational educational training on one hand and university, so that unique blend of skills and theory to apply to new industries and emerging industry, whether they're advanced apprenticeships, whether they're lifelong upskilling in terms of different units, or perhaps their new degrees themselves, which will apply. So in other words, that you can join, you can exit with a level of qualification at a vocational education training level, or you can exit with an associate diploma or a degree, depending upon the student and their requirements. Industry are telling us that they really want the skills now, so that not all the time a degree is required. And probably the fourth area is to offer career advice, not just at the school level, but off the post-school level. As we've seen through the pandemic, that there's been a lot of challenges in terms of whole industries have had to transition, whether you're in the hospitality or tourism industry, that a great need is to able to provide professional advice on how people can move between the career that they do now and future opportunities in different careers. That's so important in terms of they can use their existing skills, transfer to the most appropriate career of their next stage of their life. There's some of the things that we're looking at. I do know that the vision laid out in India's education policy 2020 shows that India is also focused on its skills development for its nation, and we're here in New South Wales are certainly welcome the opportunity to assist in any way which we can. I've had the opportunity to travel to India a number of times and actually discuss these issues in many of the forums. And whilst I perceive India requires a low cost, high number delivery mechanism, in contrast, we're a low numbers, high cost delivery. I'm sure there's many things that we can exchange and learn from each other and be able to assist each other. Can I say I do also recognise online today the High Commissioner, Australia's High Commissioner, Barry O'Farrell. It's good to see you again, Barry. But everybody else, can I say to you in India, our thoughts and our prayers are with you at the moment during COVID-19, which is obviously a devastating time for India and right around the world, but particularly in the Indian subcontinent, that we do not underestimate the difficulties that you're having at the moment. But I'm sure that India will get through it, and that the worst hopefully is behind you. And as I said, that we're open to working together, but to see how we can be of assistance. Again, thank you for the Australia in India Business Chamber for putting on today's summit. It's a worthy summit. Peter Mackey will send some great information and talk about our study in New South Wales and our commitment to education and our international education. So thank you very much, Dr. Partha.
Thank you, Honourable Minister Dr. Jeff Lee. Thanks for making the time to come and address us. I've received so many emails and messages from our friends in India who are in education sector, from vice chancellors to deans to academicians. They were all waiting to hear from you, from the horse's mouth, our commitment, and most importantly, the consistency and the quality of the Australian skills training sector that they're eagerly looking towards of some kind of a collaboration and partnership. So thanks, Dr. Lee, once more. And I'm sure we will engage with you further for the second round of roundtables and more deep diving into this collaboration and partnership. With that, I now invite His Excellency Honorable Barry O'Farrell, AO, the High Commissioner of Australia to India, Government of Australia. Mr. O'Farrell, AO, served in the Parliament of New South Wales from 1995 to 2015, including as a state's 43rd Premier between 2011 and 2014. As Premier, Mr. O'Farrell initiated and led annual trade mission to India to promote economic, cultural, and social links between New South Wales and the states of India. He has also served as New South Wales Special Envoy for India and has made a significant contribution as the Deputy Chair of the Australia-India Council Board. Mr. O'Farrell is one of the strongest advocates of Australia-India relationship. Without taking any further time, I will hand over to His Excellency, Honorable Barry O'Farrell, for his opening remarks.
Well, thank you for that. And namaskar from the Australian High Commission here in New Delhi. I want to acknowledge all the distinguished participants who have joined today, but given my background, I particularly want to acknowledge India's Minister of Education, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal, and of course the ever youthful looking and for a moment there silent Minister for Skills and Tertiary Education, Dr. Jeff Lee. And can I thank the Australia-India Business Council for organising this event and everything that they do regularly to support the Australia-India relationship. At the outset, I want to acknowledge the anxiety, anguish and grief caused by the current COVID wave in India and extend sympathies to all those affected, whether those here in India or, of course, within Australia's incredible India diaspora. I also want to acknowledge the efforts of the Indian government as it both seeks to coordinate the response to the current wave and at the same time rolls out its vaccination program, which has now reached 180 million people. I'm happy to say that included me on the 6th of April. I also acknowledge the efforts of the Australian government in joining with many other countries in supporting India by providing practical items like oxygen concentrators, more than 3,000 ventilators, and the offer of other medical supplies. And I know that other states, businesses across Australia and individuals and groups, including the Australia-India Business Council, are also active in this space. The global pandemic will run its course and will either be defeated or we will learn how to live with it. The world is not going to stop, and that's why events such as today's are so important. If I can start with a quick taking of stock. While India is facing one of the world's worst outbreaks of COVID-19 to date, its economy rapidly recovered after the first wave, and there's no reason to expect this won't reoccur again. The Australian Treasury, in its budget forecasts, predicted 11% growth for India in 2021, and in the forward years, India's growth rate predictions are higher than most other countries. Monthly indicators suggest that economic activity remained resilient throughout April, with industrial production, power demand and trade activity remaining near or above pre-pandemic levels. So the pandemic has not altered India's potential to reap the demographic details of its young population, which Dr. Pokhriyal referred to. 640 million young people, or to put it in a way I like to bring it home to Australian audiences, every month in India, 1 million people turn 18. That's the imperative for skilling, the imperative for jobs, and that's what drives Dr. Pokhriyal and his cabinet in addressing these issues. A reform of the education framework, of course, is integral, and India needs to stoke the engine that its economy with skilled workers. I have this report that the Modi government has been proactively embracing reforms since the first outbreak of COVID here in March of last year. And India's national education policy, launched in July last year, is an example, and it sets the policy framework for vocational education and training in all aspects of an individual's learning in primary school, in secondary school, and of course in higher education. The policy invites all Indians to reimagine vocational education and skills training, no longer as lesser than higher education, but as a parallel path to individual prosperity, as the mechanism to turn fresh graduates into the work-ready drivers of India's economy in the future. Australia is committed to working with international partners to help meet their domestic skills development needs. It's expressed this through the Vocational Education and Training International Engagement Strategy 2025. Its actions include the promotion of Australia's VET frameworks and systems internationally and building strategic linkages with bilateral partners like India. So how do we make policies like the National Education Policy and the Vocational Educational Training International Engagement Strategy 2025 connect and speak to each other in a way that delivers benefits for people on both sides of the Indian Ocean? Well, happily, there is significant bilateral architecture between India and Australia to enable a strategic partnership which meets both countries' needs. the Australia-India Ministerial Dialogue and Education Cooperation in November 19 saw Dr. Pokhriel and his then Australian ministerial counterpart, Dan Tehan, agree and stress the importance of education to maximise the potential of our country's human capital. In June last year, Prime Minister Modi and Morrison, amidst the pandemic, reaffirmed education, research and skills as central components of the India-Australia relationship under the comprehensive strategic partnership that they signed. Critically important for your discussion today, the Memorandum on Understanding on Cooperation in VET was signed between the Ministry of Skills Development and Entrepreneurship and the Department of Education, Skills and Employment under that CSP. The significance of MOUs can't be ignored in this country because, as was put to me when I first arrived here a long time ago, it provides no excuse for not pursuing an issue connected to that country related to that Memorandum of Understanding. The inaugural Australia-India Joint Working Group meeting on VET met in November 2020, signifying Australia as one of India's preferred partners in policy development in this area. And it provides a formal mechanism for both Australia and India to cooperate on skills development, influence India's skills ecosystem, and subsequently improve market access for Australian providers in India. And I'm pleased that Ms. Saxon Rice, CEO of the Australian Skills Quality Authority, is here online today. ASCA is an energetic participant in the VET Joint Working Group in March, and it presented a webinar on India's VET regulator, the National Council of Vocational Education and Training, focused on quality assurance in VET through sharing best practices. And focusing on quality assurance is a priority interest area for the Indian government. Where individuals are already working in the workforce and require upskilling, Australia can work with India to provide focused skills trainings. The team here at the High Commission have already met with the Indian commerce and industry bodies to develop pathways for international skills development and train the trainer programs at price points that we believe will appeal to the Indian market. In wishing this skills roundtable all the best, I urge you to make yourself familiar with the existing bilateral architecture and leverage it to the utmost to your advantage. Now, some of you are aware that I have a bit of a history in another lifetime with vocational education in India. I'm also the proud father of a son who will complete at the end of this year his carpentry apprenticeship through the New South Wales TAFE system. I personally believe that VET can be a powerful tool for economic recovery in both our countries, equipping the population with job-ready skills and providing opportunities for upskilling and reskilling at a scale is a significant challenge here in India, but it's also an opportunity as India's economy steadies and emerges again from this pandemic. Please make the most of today by laying the groundwork for the skilled up India tomorrow. I thank you again for the opportunity to participate, the opportunity to say a few words, but above all, I thank you for everything you're doing to further strengthen the Australia-India relationship.
Thank you, His Excellency, Honourable Barry O'Farrell. You have very comprehensively given the background that both the governments are working together, and now is the time for implementation of the operators at the business level. Thank you once again for making your time. I now take the pleasure of inviting the three eminent speakers, one after another, to share the thoughts that has some bearing on the potential collaboration between Australia and India in the areas of skills training and qualification. We are running a little late, therefore I will be introducing the three eminent panel members with a little bit of summarizing their highlights, but the whole details of their introduction will be in the screen for every audience to read. So my first panel member is Ms. Saxon Rice. Saxon is the National VET Regulator and Chief Executive Officer of Australian Skills Quality Authority. Saxon has extensive experience across vet and employment service sectors, as well as the policy process. And more recently, she was a member of the Administrative Panel Tribunal from 2016 to 18, and has been a member of the member and graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. She is the chair of the Ministerial Industry Commission responsible for industry engagement. Ms. Rice has also served in a range of Senate committee secretariats, including as acting secretary and principal research officer to the Senate Foreign Affairs, Defense and Trade Committee. And I invite now Ms. Saxon Rice to address her part of the speech.
Thank you very much, Partha.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have just a couple of very brief slides, but first I would like to very much thank the Australia-India Business Council and the INC Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to present today. I'd also like to acknowledge all distinguished speakers before me and, of course, my fellow panellists. The Australian Skills Quality Authority always welcomes the opportunity to work with other regulators, with governments and industry with an interest in supporting excellence and quality in vocational education and training. And as His Excellency just mentioned in his remarks, the Australian Skills Quality Authority, or ASQA for short, recently participated in that Memorandum of Understanding process with the National Council of Vocational Education and Training in India. And we very much look forward to continuing to collaborate with the Council going forward in the interests of improving the quality of VET, or vocational education and training, cross-jurisdictionally. So today, the Australia-India Business Council asked me to provide just a very brief overview of the regulatory system for vocational education and training in Australia, and also ASQA's role in ensuring quality VET outcomes for both domestic and international students. If the slides are available, there is slide number 2, that's it, the VET system in Australia. This is a good representation for you. It trains around 4.2 million students each year, and students can study with more than 4,000 providers. And as the national regulator, ASQA regulates the majority of these providers, with only a small proportion regulated by state-based regulators in 2 of our states. Students can study in 56 industry training packages. Just over 1,250 qualifications make up those packages. There's also 670 accredited courses, all of which includes around 15,500 units of competency. And as you can see on this slide, the Australian VET system has many stakeholders who share responsibility for supporting quality vocational education and training outcomes. This includes a framework for student and consumer protection, importantly the involvement of industry and employers, broader government architecture and independent regulators. ASQA collaborates and shares information with the variety of agencies and organisations that form the whole of the VET regulatory architecture as part of our role. And the next slide, please. This slide really just outlines for you the Australian Skills Quality Authority's role, and through our regulation and partnership with others, ASQA's role in this system is to ensure quality VET so that students, employers, governments and the community can all have confidence in the integrity of national qualifications issued by training providers. ASQA ensures quality VET by performing a range of different functions, including the regulation and registering of registered training organisations delivering in Australia. And that includes the delivery of vocational education and training in schools, as well as providers of English language courses, those that deliver to overseas students, providers delivering nationally accredited training offshore, and also the accreditation of courses. We do this according to national legislation, the VET quality framework, broader vocational education and training legislation, and standards, as well as training package requirements. But ASQA we don't, as a body, set any of those standards or the legislation or training product requirements that we regulate. That's the role of the Australian Parliament and our Skills Council. But as the national VET regulator, we undertake our role by undertaking performance assessments of providers and supporting providers to assure themselves of their compliance with the standards and their achievement of quality outcomes. We also provide education and guidance for the sector to support their understanding of their obligations in relation to quality. We take a proportionate approach to responding to non-compliance, and we work with the sector to determine what quality vet delivery actually looks like. So in conclusion, the vet architecture in Australia includes a strong regulatory framework, all of which really contributes to the overall confidence stakeholders can have in the quality of outcomes of Australian registered training organisations. Thank you, Partha. I'm happy to leave that there.
Thank you, Saxon. That was so important for our audience from India to understand an overview of how the quality is delivered for the Australian qualifications in the skills sector. I'm sure this is just the beginning, and we'll have more interactions, and we'll probably deep dive into understanding so that the collaborations could be more fruitful and more effective. So thank you, Saxon, once more. Now I invite our second panel member, Mr. Peter Mackey. Peter is the Director, Education Engagement Investment, New South Wales. Peter Mackey joined the New South Wales government in October 2014 after 7 years with Austrade. Peter was posted as a Trade Commissioner to Hanoi 2010 and later to Singapore. During this time, he also held a regional role as Education Commissioner, ASEAN, leading Austrade's regional education team across Southeast Asia. Over the past 20 years, Peter has worked primarily in the education and training and across several government agencies, including trade and investment, industry and treasury. In his current role with Investment New South Wales in the Department of Premier and Cabinet, Peter oversees the New South Wales government's international education strategy through Study New South Wales and engagement with the broader education sector in New South Wales as part of the trade team based in Sydney. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Partha. And I'd also like to thank the AOBC for the opportunity. Namaskar, everyone. I also do want to send my thoughts to colleagues in India for what you're currently having to endure. And as the Minister said earlier, I do hope that the worst is now behind you. I was actually there in India in March last year with some of our panellists that are here today for the Australia-India Business Week with Minister Ayres from the New South Wales Government, exploring opportunities for education and training collaboration. And it's hard to believe that was over a year ago now, but time certainly moves on. Look, I just wanted to cover 3 points today, if I can. Firstly, I wanted to talk about the New South Wales Government's response during COVID-19 to support international students, and whether those students were studying in higher education or vocational education and training or English or schools. Normally, we would have around 260,000 international students studying here in New South Wales. We had just under 200,000 here when the borders actually closed. So some students obviously returned home and got stuck. About 15% of the international students here in New South Wales are from India, and students certainly were very vulnerable. So the state government here, actually Minister Lee led this work and announced the $20 million international student welfare package in May of 2020. And that was really focused around 3 things. Firstly, we ran a crisis accommodation scheme to provide vulnerable students for up to 20 weeks free accommodation for so that they were not having to stay with friends or be put at a health risk. And that was a partnership with our student accommodation providers. So we've supported over almost 6,500 students through that program, and they're currently still in accommodation until June. Thankfully now, with the economy improving and the health situation under control here, students are now finding more secure ongoing accommodation. But we've also worked with Food Bank, which is a charity here in New South Wales, to provide around 30,000 free hampers to international students who are struggling again with costs due to losing their jobs and so on. So that was the first thing I wanted to cover. The second thing I wanted to talk about, which is more relevant to the topic of today, is that opportunities for collaboration between New South Wales or Australian skills or vocational education and training providers, or VET as we say here in Australia, remains very strong. And this is why the New South Wales government at the moment is in the process of expanding its international network, including in India. So I just wanted to let you know that at the moment, the New South Wales government, in addition to the Australian government presence in India, has an office in Mumbai, but we are expanding to have an office in Bangalore and also in New Delhi over the course of this year and next year. And we will have in those offices, we will have staff who will be specialists in education to support collaboration. At the same time, the state government has identified international education as a key priority sector for New South Wales. So Study New South Wales, which also falls under my area, as mentioned in the overview, has been given an additional budget here over the next 3 to 4 years, which will mean we'll be able to employ additional staff and some specialists in skills training to be able to, I guess, provide connections between education and training providers here so that we can connect them up through our staff in India. And I'm going to talk about some of one of the panel sessions in a moment around some of the features, and I'll give some examples of the collaboration that's already happening. And look, the final thing I just wanted to cover off on is planning around international students being able to return to Australia. You may have read in the media that New South Wales is very advanced in its planning to be able to try to find a pathway for students to start coming back to New South Wales, hopefully in the second part of this year. And so we're working very closely with the Australian government around those plans, and we'll hope to have more details to share with you about that soon. So that's probably all I wanted to say. And if we're running a bit short, Partha, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you, Peter. That was excellent. I think as we progress towards the partnership between the two countries and skills qualifications are delivered online to the Indian students, the next question from the Indian students and the parents and the universities will be what kind of help and support they can expect from New South Wales government. So you have shared, you and your team and the New South Wales government, how they can help, they have been helping. I thought that was very reassuring. And I think we should continue this dialogue in the future roundtables like this. So thank you, Peter, once again. Now I invite the third panel member, Professor Rintu Banerjee. Now, as you all know, that the director of IIT Kharagpur, Professor V.K. Tiwari, was supposed to be here. However, we got the sad news that Professor Tiwari's father just expired, and he was profusely apologetic that in the last moment he had to break this news, which is beyond his control. But Professor Tiwari actually nominated Professor Rintu Banerjee, and Professor Banerjee very kindly in the last minute consented to be with us to be the representative of IIT Kharagpur's director. So welcome, Professor Banerjee. As a quick introduction, Professor Rintu Banerjee is the head of Agricultural and Food Engineering Department and Center for Rural Development and Innovative Sustainable Technology, the founder head of P.K. Sinha Center of Bioenergy and Renewables, ex-chair professor, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. Professor Banerjee is acknowledged as one of the leading enzymologists working in the area of food fermentation and bioenergy. She has completed her PhD in Biotechnology Unit, Chemical Engineering Department of IIT Kharagpur. She has bestowed with the prestigious Outstanding Woman Scientist Award and many similar awards. Her significant contribution comprises of cost-effective industrial enzymes production using agro residues with immense application in food and biofuel. Professor Banerjee has established a novel 2G ethanol technology around the biorefinery, and through her innovative research, she has been granted with 3 international and 8 national patents, out of which 10 technologies have been already transferred to different industries and agricultural stakeholders. Professor Banerjee guides about 39 PhD students, published 200 articles, 48 book chapters, and authored and edited books. Over to Professor Banerjee.
Namaskar, our honorable Education Minister Sri Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank ji, Dr. Geoff Lee, Mr. Barry O. Farwell, Ms. Sakshan Rice, Mr. Peter Mackey, Dr. Partha Mukherjee, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you. Indian Institute of Technology is one of the top engineering and technological institutes in India and is proud to produce global leaders like Mr. Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, and many such more to name. NEP 2020 has been formulated by Government of India to reform the Indian education system that is thought-provoking, action-oriented, empathy-showing courage, resilience, and compassion towards scientific temper, and with the motive to build the new self-reliance India. The education system in the new policy envisages the reform from school education to higher learning. The curriculum of IIT Kharagpur is focused towards excellence in engineering and technology. The new education policy 2020 open up the opportunity to add skills, training to complement the existing curriculum and increase the employability of our graduating engineers. The national institutions like IITs are taking a proactive role for proper implementation of this policy so that the standard of education throughout India across government or non-government institutions will be set. Thus, the pedagogy of learning process is planned to be holistic, acceptable, and enjoyable. For proper implementation of NEP, different initiative has been taken so that the holistic development on the curriculum, extracurricular, or co-curricular activities can be equally emphasized and include physical education, art and craft, vocational skills, and so on. In today's discussion, I would like to emphasize the focus on upgradation of the curriculum in the IITs with special emphasis on the practical training for skill development so that the graduates who are coming out will be equipped with the skill and they will be readily absorbed by the industry. We produce high quality of engineers, but NEP 2020 has opened up the opportunity to amalgamate the skill development aspects with high technical knowledge. Therefore, we are exploring the possibilities of introducing new skill training and qualification like project management that complement our existing engineering degree for better employability of our graduating students. Introducing of appropriate and relevant skill training like the project management will help in fulfilling the objective under NEP 2020 of enhancing job opportunities of the graduates who are getting groomed for 4 to 5 years. I'm hopeful opening dialogue will help in introducing skill training in qualification of our curriculum. And our next step would be to engage the more comprehensive discussion that how this potential collaboration with Australia and its detailing out, say for example, the training program, number of credit, how the classes will be taken care of, the means of assessment, whether and what will be the pattern of examinations and so on. I would like to thank the Australia-India Business Council, Dr. Partha Mukherjee, and the support given by both our government while we are in the active stage of implementing NEP 2020. On behalf of our beloved director, Professor V.K. Tiwari, and on my own behalf, I'm inviting you all to visit IIT Kharagpur and India, but not now, after this pandemic is getting over. And it is my open invitation to you all to come to our institute. And once again, I thank you all for patience in hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Rintu Banerjee. I will be the first person to take the invitation because I graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 1979 and I haven't got an opportunity to visit back again. So thank you for your open invitation. Thanks also for giving us the insight how IIT Kharagpur, one of the leading premier engineering and technology institute, are thinking of incorporating skills training into your curriculum, which is already one of the best in India and probably one of the best within the world. So thank you for sharing your insights, how you are actually approaching NEP and trying to incorporate the skills training, where Australia can be a very important partner. We are running a little late, but we'll quickly go through the 3 themes that we have already thought of having panel discussion. Each of these themes will be led by one of our panelists. So the first theme is around the components of successful collaboration between Australia and India, led by Saxon Rice. So I'm not going into the details, which will be in the slide, but Saxon, if you could take over, please.
Thanks again, Partha. Well, I thought there might be some value in considering what some of the key components might be for successful collaboration between Australia and India. And in this context, particularly in relation to the opportunity for sharing experiences and knowledge on skills and vocational education and training. It's obviously worth considering what levels that collaboration might occur at a government level, at a regulatory level, but also the value of collaboration in relation to broader implementation. You've already heard a little bit today, in particular, His Excellency, Australia's High Commissioner, touched on one of those really important elements of successful bilateral collaboration being the engagement at a government-to-government level. And the Australia-India comprehensive strategic partnership, which was agreed last June, identified vocational education and training as a central component of the Australia-India relationship. And that statement really opened the door for greater information sharing and enhanced bilateral collaboration. And at the same time as that partnership was agreed, Australia's Department of Education, Skills and Employment and Australia's Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship signed the Memorandum of Understanding on Cooperation in VET, as His Excellency mentioned. And that really helps to focus future cooperation on mutually agreed topics, including sharing information on VET policy developments, quality assurance frameworks, labour market information systems, and the implementation in particular of vocational education and training in schools programs. That MOU also set up a mechanism of a joint working group of VET officials from India and Australia, and a preliminary meeting of that working group, which I attended in November last year, was held, and since then there's been a number of outcomes from that working group, not least agreeing a plan for an action plan for this year, sharing information in particular around data-driven labour market analysis models, which has been developed by Australia's National Skills Commission. And from ASQA's perspective, from my perspective, my organisation's perspective, that's been about sharing information on skills regulation and quality assurance with the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship and India's National Council for VET, which included, as His Excellency mentioned, that webinar in March. But we've also committed to continuing to work with the Ministry in relation in particular to our compliance framework and our complaints management processes. In relation to VET in school, it's also currently being progressed by the Australia and India Joint Working Group Action Plan, and Australia has agreed to hold a webinar for India to share policy information and our approach to vocational education and training for secondary schools. And it's anticipated also that some of the information sharing processes in relation to that will begin in August of this year. So that was just some of the examples, I guess, of the government to government and also regulatory collaboration that has been occurring and will continue to occur. There's also obviously the opportunity to consider broader collaboration in relation to delivery, including across providers and or with employers and industry that other panelists might like to comment on. So I invite them now to do so.
Thanks very much, Saxon. I might jump in there if that's okay. So during my time in Singapore, I also had responsibility for South Asia as part of my regional role, including ASEAN. So I travelled to India several times, and it was one of the trips a number of those trips was during the time when former High Commissioner Varghese was there. And I just wanted to reference Mr. Varghese's report in 2018 to the Australian Government and India Economic Strategy to 2035. It specifically referenced that there being no sector with greater promise for Australia in India than education. So I think I just wanted to jump on the point that you raised there, and Minister Lee referenced this earlier. I think he mentioned that Australia was a high cost, low volume delivery partner, whereas India was sort of seeking a high volume, low cost. And so that was one of the key issues that I noticed, not only in ASEAN, in many of the countries in ASEAN, including say Philippines or Vietnam, but particularly in India. So there seemed to be this huge gap between the expectations on the one hand for an Australian provider to deliver a program commercially viably, but at the same time for an Indian partner to be able to fund the cost of that training affordably for such large numbers of people. So the models that I found that were the ones that were most successful, what you just referenced there, Saxon, which is the key ingredient is having an industry partner, because obviously the industry partners, whether you're in Australia or India, one of the key issues that industry always finds incredibly challenging is the ability to have skilled labour and labour with the right kind of skill set that they need in order to increase productivity and ultimately profitability. So training is obviously at the core of that. And so it's in their best interest for that training to occur. And often the training organisations are not actually putting out graduates who have got skill sets that's needed. So I think the secret there in terms of collaboration is to have that industry partner who can help cross-subsidise and help co-fund the cost of that delivery and make sure the delivery of that training is going to be appropriate for the staff that they have. So they're some of the examples that I've seen working before. And a couple of examples, if I've got time, just quickly. TAFE New South Wales, I know, has been providing training in India for some time. And they had a strong partnership, in this case, not with industry, but with government through the Odisha state government in the healthcare and hospitality industry, which I know was very successful. Unfortunately, I think some of that training has been delayed or had to be shifted online due to COVID, but there's plenty of examples such as that. In the interest of time, I might pause there in case Professor Rintu has any comments that she wanted to make.
Thank you, Peter. Professor Banerjee, is there anything else that you'd like to contribute?
You need to unmute yourself, Professor.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, so we are really very, very serious and very sincere about this program. And as you have already heard, that our minister has already mentioned that we have a huge scope for implementing such opportunities in Indian educational system. But to start with, what I was thinking that if we can start this program on trial basis to judge its acceptability and its impact in the real sense. So that was my immediate reaction, because it has, of course it has impact, but as our country is a very huge country, our requirement is also very different industries are there, different requirements are also there. So to start with, so if we can go in a phase wise manner, and if we can see its success, and then we can percolate slowly and capture the entire educational system, starting from the secondary school level, or that type of, which is already been taken care of in NEP 2020. So that is my way of thinking. So I may tell Mr. Vinod or Dr. Partha Mukherjee to react on my comment, and if it can be, and if they have anything more to say.
Thank you very much, Professor. I think you have already touched upon the theme 3, because that was exactly what was required to be discussed. And I think you already shared that the requirement from the Indian Institute's perspective will be to understand more how it could be trialed, how it could be implemented, and then progress from there onward. So what we'll do in that case is theme 3 we will drop, but we will have the last theme, which is theme number 2, which is led by Peter Mackey. So over to Peter to deliberate on the theme 2. The theme 2 is essentially about creating opportunities for students, to gain on-the-job experience post their skills training. So if the Indian students have Australian skills training in India, what will happen after that? Is there any opportunity for them to get some more on-the-job experience? So over to you, Peter.
Sorry, I'm just on mute. Thanks very much, Partha. So look, I think this is really crucial. Now, what I wanted to talk about is what the New South Wales government has done here in terms of providing opportunities to students. Now, clearly during, as I mentioned before, during the pandemic, we have students studying both face-to-face and also online. So what we have decided to do here is to switch all of our programs to be delivered either face-to-face or online. So I wanted to give a couple of examples of those, because what we find here is often international students get the kind of content skills from their providers, but they don't necessarily get the employability skills that they need to be successful in the workplace. And I'm happy to share the links for some of these seminars, Partha, after the session, but students who may be studying with providers, whether they're in India or here, are welcome to join in some of these programs. So we're currently running a schedule of 18 events, and some of those include seminars on navigating the graduate employment journey during COVID, how to write winning resumes, how to create your own personal brand, advanced job application strategies, how to succeed at interviews, how to develop strong online presence in LinkedIn, and so on. So they are a range of different programs that students can participate in. Again, I'm happy to share those links throughout with you. We've also spent a lot of time here talking to the business community about the importance of engaging students through internships, because we find students, particularly international students, can bring great perspectives to employers. So we really try and encourage that. And we have developed a range of webinars to be able to showcase some of those examples. Again, I know you're running short of time, Partha, so I might pause there in case some of the other panelists have any comments.
Thank you, Peter. I'm happy to just jump in with one comment really, and that's perhaps picking up on your comments in relation to the delivery of training online. And as the national vet regulator, we obviously have a role in relation to all modes of delivery and the role in terms of ensuring quality. It's obviously all of those concepts, the on-the-job experience and the demonstration of competency in context, very much fundamental components of vocational education. And as I say, ASQA is very much alert to the need to ensure quality in relation to all different modes, including the delivery of online training. So we have been undertaking over recent months a strategic review of online learning in the vet sector in Australia. And this work has really been about, as I say, ensuring that we are well placed to regulate online delivery. But it's also an opportunity for ASQA to engage with the sector to build a greater understanding of the benefits and the risks posed by online learning, so that we as the National Vet Regulator can support the sector through our education and guidance to support quality outcomes in that delivery of online, of training online. So ultimately, again, all of that work is really about supporting overall confidence in the quality of Australian providers in all modes of delivery.
Professor, you have anything to add?
Yes, what I would like to mention here is that online training is okay. As far as the theory is concerned, okay, online is fine. But will it be only theoretical? But hands-on training is also equally important as far as the technical training program is getting concerned. And in that case, that theory plus practical altogether, if we are considering, then every time it may not happen that hands-on, online training will be satisfying all the requirement of the students. So that is why here is also my query and question, that how to take care of this practicality of this particular training. Can we go for the customized modification of the syllabus or the curriculum which will be given to them, and in which way we will be showing them so that it will be more acceptable? Because in vocational training program, if I'm not wrong, last more than 5 decades you people are working on it, and you have different specialization and with expertise, which we want to implement in our country now. So what I would like to know, that if based on our need and our requirement, if we can go for the customized this program for a specific group of people, I think it will be more acceptable. I don't know. I would like to have your comment, because you people are handling this type of courses since long. So you will be the better person to comment on that. But what my so many years of teaching, I can tell that yes, this type of pattern may help our system. So
Saxon, would you like to take that question?
Thank you, and thank you, Professor Banerjee. Probably just a short comment to say that what we have seen as the national regulator is a lot of innovation in the in delivery online over, given the circumstances that COVID has presented. So there are a lot of different and new ways, which is part of the reason why we were so keen to undertake our strategic review, so that we could ensure that we were well placed to both regulate, but also or ensure we're not inhibiting that innovation in the mode of delivery. So there's certainly some great innovation occurring.
Fantastic. Professor Banerjee, I will take that question in great details in the question answer after this webinar, but just a one-liner that there are many skills which could be equally delivered for competency through online. For example, presentation skills, even online meeting skills. So these are quite possible. On the contrary, something like cooking that cannot be delivered online. So we need to carefully choose which competencies can be delivered and which will complement the.
I agree with you. Absolutely right. But depending upon the discipline and the specialization,
correct.
That is most important.
Correct.
And that may be the reason I have mentioned that based on the need.
Correct.
So what is that particular specialization?
Yeah. Thank you. So with that, I think we will now conclude the webinar, and I will hand over that to Vinod for our AIBC India director to propose the vote of thanks. However, we'll continue to have this discussion in future webinars. And for today, all the people who have posed questions, we will continue informally after the close of this in the same link, so that if you are keen, you can stay back and we can have informal chat with the question from the audience. Over to you, Vinod.
Thank you, Dr. Partha. Ministers, High Commissioner from Australia to India, His Excellency Barry O'Farrell, Mr. Jim Verghese, AO National Chair, Australia-India Business Council, Dr. Partha Mukherjee, Chapter Chair, Education, Skills and Training Council, Australia-India Business Council, distinguished panelists, Saxon Ray, Mr. Peter Mackey, Professor Banerjee, ladies and gentlemen who are watching this and tuned in from across the globe. It is indeed a privilege and a pleasure to have the opportunity to propose a vote of thanks at this very interactive session and webinar on Australia and India skills training and collaboration. Minister Pokhriyal Nishank-ji, you began the session with a really inspiring video, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and vision of India's aspiration in the skill development area. Your 4 C's and the launch of the new education policy, certainly at a time when the world is at a challenge of COVID-19, focuses on the aspirations that the country has in building not only a capacity from capacity building to nation building, as mentioned by you. We shall certainly seek the advance your suggestion of a task force to further strengthen the links between Australia and India, specifically on skills and education. Thank you very much for that warm address. Minister Jeff Lee, thank you so much for your opening remarks and sharing New South Wales government's engagement and initiatives in India, but also across Australia. Your 4-pronged approach of skill development, informed career decisions, upskilling, and commitment to quality really showcases the long-term deep commitment that you have to India and the relationship in the Australia-India education and skills sector specifically. Thank you very much for your support by joining us, and also for the support extended to the Australia-India Business Council. Thank you very much. High Commissioner, His Excellency Barry O'Farrell, you have been a champion of the Australia-India relationship at different ends, and currently as High Commissioner from Australia to India, really playing a vital role in building upon what has already been architecturally developed, as you highlighted through the various existing collaborations that exist, the partner education MOU, not only speaking from policy to policy, but the importance of speaking people to people. I think you're reminding us of the existing framework certainly helps us to get into dialogues like these very effectively. We thank you for reminding us really what you have put together this morning through the minister's speech on what was the scale of India, the salience of Australia, but how do we match this together and make it really sustainable. So thank you very much for those warm remarks and setting the tone into this really lively roundtable discussion. Our distinguished panelists, Saxon Rice, Peter Mackey, Dr. Banerjee, I won't go into thanking each of you for your work, but really putting together such a fantastic panel and covering such large ground in perhaps what we have a short time. But Saxon Rice, your architectural framework of ASQ certainly has answered a lot of questions and is also important in the deepening of this Australia-India skills relationship framework. Peter Mackey, your examples and sharing of the New South Wales commitment in times which are trying, including COVID-19, and your expansion really speaks volumes of the state government of New South Wales commitment to India, but also Australia's commitment to the entire bilateral relationship. The focus of your experiences on education and examples covered through both panel discussions were really welcomed and will be useful once again. Dr. Mukherjee, thank you so much. Dr. Banerjee, thank you so much for your joining us today. You have really put what I would say a real test on each of the frameworks and discussions held. And I really appreciate your passion in sharing the experiences from India, but also really making this realistic, workable, and really enjoyable in the spirit of collaboration. Moving closer to home, I would like to thank our National Chair, Mr. Jim Verghese, AO, for not only that wonderful video and welcome message this morning, but your stalwart leadership in bringing AIBC to new heights. And we thank you and are very appreciative of that. Ladies and gentlemen, today's event and webinar would not have been complete to thank Dr. Partha Mukherjee, who's really been the raison d'etre for all of us being here today. Dr. Mukherjee, your passion, hard work, and persistence has really been showcased through this webinar, and we look forward to having many such more in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to also take this opportunity to thank each of you for not only being such an interactive audience with all the questions that have been pouring in before the registration, while the discussions have been going on, but also bearing with us on the extended timeline. So thank you very much for joining us from across the globe, across various platforms that you're signing in from, whether it's Zoom, YouTube, Facebook. It is really exciting to see the world become one smaller space. It would be incomplete for me to finish a thanks without thanking the core team. I would specifically like to thank the AIBC team, Ms. Wendy Farrell at the National Secretariat, and a special thanks to Vishal Kumar, who has been providing the excellent technical support. And thank you so much to the Education Chapter Committee for making all of this a huge success, and not only an enjoyable seminar, but also a very impactful seminar. I would like to highlight an initiative by Australia-India Business Council of the AIBC India COVID Relief Fundraising Drive Initiative. Further details can be found on our website. I would like to formally bring this webinar to a close and thank each one of you for joining us today once again and for your patience and interest in today's session. We look forward to welcoming you back to our future AIBC events and seminars. As Dr. Partha Mukherjee alluded, we will be continuing the session for those who may wish to stay on in the same login to answer the questions that have been sent in through your registrations or that have come up through this session. Please continue to stay on and look forward to engaging with those of you who stay on and all of you in the near future. Thank you very much and stay safe, and thank you once again.